icon at the bottom of the Zoom screen and select your language. If you're using a mobile phone, kindly click on the three dots at the bottom right corner of your phone and select your preferred language. Everyone should be able to get this both in English and French. Welcome. Thank you so much. I hope that we've all been able to get the language interpretation, and now we can move into this. My name is Evans Mswahili Ladema. I'm from Vihiga Community Justice Center in Vihiga, in Kenya. I want to request you to introduce yourselves in the chat, typing your name, your organization, and your country, so that we can all be able to know who is on the call with us today. Welcome all. And while that is happening, I'm happy I can see members doing that, introducing themselves. While that is happening, I want to ask my colleague Crispin to introduce herself too, and take it over from now. Crispin, please.
Bonjour tout le monde, j'espère que vous allez bien de partout où vous nous suivez.
Hello everyone, and I hope you can hear me from wherever you are. My name is Crispin Ngena. I am from Alternative Regina. I am based in GC. I work with Evans. I'm going to give Joy the floor so she can talk to us before we get into the crisp of the things. Is it possible to ask Crispin to use a microphone, please, because she sounds far from her computer.
Crispin, are you able to use a microphone? We are having trouble hearing you.
Pardon, je n'ai pas suivi. Non, est-ce que là ça va?
Are you able to hear Crispin now, Francis?
Not too well.
Because I think it's okay from my side. I don't know if anyone else is having a challenge.
Au fait, j'étais en train de dire que je suis Crispin Ngena. Je suis de l'organisation
She had said she's Crispin Ngena from the Alternative Homestead Management bases in DRC. But before she goes ahead, she wants to give the floor to Joy to introduce herself. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Nuria Mohammed. I'm taking place for Joy Nasike, who's away for this meeting today. I just want to thank everyone for joining this meeting and taking the time to be part of this discussion. I'm just going to give a brief introduction. This is our GJN Africa's second learning circle. And as we all know, practitioners in Africa, we continue to see them using various strategies to build community power and fight systemic injustices. In our learning circles, especially this one, we want to highlight these strategies that communities are using, and they will be informed by the Building Community Power curriculum that was able to fund 18 projects in Africa in general. So this project aims to discuss key strategies in detail that are commonly used to build community power and fight systemic justice. Some of the strategies are casework, collective action, community education, and developing grassroots leadership. In addition, we also want to know that practitioners continue to ask these 5 main questions when working in the community. Some of the questions are, how do you get a community to come together and agree on what they want? How do you sustain community engagement on an issue? How do we work around unsupportive leaders, local elders, chiefs while advocating for change? What do you do when the community is empowered, actively pursuing their rights, but the government or local authorities remain unresponsive? And the last question that communities ask is, how can we get communities to leverage their local resources and strengths to participate in activities instead of always expecting and relying on funding? So these questions are what we would like to continuously learn from each other on how they are being addressed through the pairing of learning with funding model and how they're implemented on the ground. So with this introduction, I would love to hand it over to Moses to give us an update from our last learning circle.
Thank you, Nuria, and good afternoon to everyone. My name is Moses Gowi, working with the Grassroots Justice Network. I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya. So as Nuria shared, this is our second learning circle, and we had our first learning circle on building community power event on 30th of July. And for that session, we had 2 organizations. We had Ruth Kaima from the Center for Human Rights Education, Advice and Assistance, better known as CREA, based in Malawi. And we had Mesan Kunabe, I think he's in the call today, from Justice and Prosperity for All, JP4A, based in Benin. And the question that we were delving into on our first learning circle was, how do we sustain community engagement? How do we keep communities engaged in the process of pursuing change, even in the long run? And there were key, the almost 50 participants who also contributed to the sessions besides Mesan and Ruth. And some of the key takeaways that we got from that session was that systemic change doesn't happen overnight, but results from years of firm persistence. So during the session, we explored practical methods that the 2 grassroots organizations and even members are using to try and keep communities hopeful and engage throughout the process of change. So some of the key takeaways, one was that to keep communities engaged, it is important to build relationships and collective power based on local needs. So this involves spending time to listen to the community members' concerns and ideas, generating ideas from within the community so that you can build genuine relationships based on trust. And this offers the best chance to keep communities involved in the long term when they understand the problem and they're proactively involved in seeking the solutions. Secondly, we learned that it's important to remember that the process of change takes time. Change doesn't happen overnight. And achieving systemic change requires sustained work. So to grow the movement and to grow community engagement, we should make it easy for members to join, to bring in more people, to bring in more energy into the movement. And this keeps people hopeful. And also something that we can do to keep people hopeful is to celebrate small wins. As much as we are looking at systemic change, if we have a small win, say a vendor or someone was arrested within the community and you're able to secure their freedom, then that's a moment for celebration, and it shows that the work that you're doing is accruing to some results, even if you're not achieving the systemic goal that you set out to achieve in the beginning. So growing the movement and connecting people's struggles across the movement is one way, and that you can keep communities engaged and drive change. Third, it's important to balance urgent needs and long-term goals. We must remember that the issues that communities are confronting are deep and have existed for years. So we might not win deep systemic change today, but at the same time, what can we do today that make communities' lives better as we slowly drive for the long-term change that we're looking for? So it's important not to lose sight, even as we solve the problems of today, it's important not to lose sight of the long-term vision. And we must keep reminding the community where they're headed and how the small steps, the small activities that we're doing lead up to the bigger goal of achieving systemic change. And fourth, it's important to be flexible. There's no one recipe for achieving systemic change. If you're using one strategy and you realize it's not working, for example, if you're using litigation and you realize that the court process is elongated and it takes time, you can pivot and maybe use direct action. So the strategies that you use should be flexible and adaptive, and where one strategy is not working, then feel free to always pivot and re-strategize. But while we are being flexible, it's important to go back to the community and tell them that we went to court, for example, we are using litigation, and we are seeing that litigation is taking a longer time, but we are pivoting and moving to use a different strategy. So we want to involve you through this process so that you're not only making the decisions autonomously as organizations, but you're involving the communities deeply, and you get their buy-in even when you're changing strategy. And lastly, it's important to build allies. We cannot work alone in these processes of change. And there are seasons for every moment, and more often wins are not achieved in isolation. So this is why we need to work together with allies and lean on unique strengths that other people can bring away from our movement. So that's the summary of our last learning circle. There's a more in-depth report that we did, and we've shared in the WhatsApp group, but we'll continue sharing. So thank you, and I'd like to hand over to Crispin to take us through the next session of the discussion. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Moses,
Thank
pour
you,
cet
Moses,
aperçu.
for this
Nous allons
background.
déjà entrer dans le vif de
We have
notre
already
rencontre
gotten
d'aujourd'hui.
into what we
Pour
have to
cette
speak
dernière
about
cycle
today,
d'apprentissage, nous
this
serons avec
last
Pierre
circle of
Zoniga
learning
du Nigeria et Dani Matendela du
from
Congo,
Nigeria
leader pour les
and from
développements
young
de la
leaders
République démocratique du Congo. Ce que
and
nous
from
devons savoir, c'est RIAV
DRC. What we need to know,
organisation qui se focalise sur la transformation
it
sociale,
is
notamment la
organization is for
réduction des comptes en matière de finances publiques,
social
le plaidoyer
transformation,
pour le droit
especially
humain, les changements
when we come
climatiques et
to
l'environnement, ainsi que la démocratie et la gouvernance. Alors, il y a le problème d'extraction minière. Il y a le problème d'extraction minière.
so there is a problem
dans le
of mining
Cross River au Nigeria, en
that
particulier
comes from
au sein du
Nigeria
parc national de l'État, qui cause
within the
d'énormes dégâts
national
à la
park of the
biodiversité et des
country
effets
that is
néfastes sur
forming a lot
l'écologie et les
of
bandes de forêt.
damages within the country.
Ces activités contribuent
So
à
these activities are
l'extinction des
contributing
espèces, au conflit entre les communautés,
to destruction
à
of
la hausse du
species
niveau des
of the
forêts,
community,
alors que les
and
minéraux
also
précieux sont extraimis. Les
augmenting
communautés
the
n'en tirent que peu ou pas davantage,
poverty
car
levels,
les opérations
because
minières
these
sont dominées
operations
par les élites puissantes
are
et les acteurs
dominated by the
extérieurs.
elite
Face à
and
l'inaction
from
du gouvernement, la situation ne fonctionne
commercial
pas,
exploitants from outside.
à
And the
l'accaparement
government is not
minier, à la
working anything.
corruption,
They're not talking
à
about
une mauvaise gestion des
corruption
ressources naturelles,
or
des
land
violations des
grabbing
droits de l'homme et sans respecter les
or
consentements préalables
non-respect
libres et
for
éclairés des
human
autorités et
rights.
l'étude d'impact
And they're not thinking about the communities.
Et face à tout ça, les femmes sont plus
And
marginalisées
women are the
et
worst
sont exclues des processus décisionnels cruciaux,
affected
sont
because they don't
désavantagées et
take part in
sont
decision
vulnérables
making.
aux impacts.
They are the most vulnerable
Alors,
and
qu'est-ce que nous
continue
devons
being
retenir
most
pour
vulnerable.
la vision
So,
des filles leaders
what
pour
should
le
we think
développement,
about
qui est une
the vision for
organisation qui
development,
travaille pour l'accès
which
à
is
la
an organization
justice des
that's
femmes
working for
et des filles indigènes
the
qui sont des victimes de
rights
violences et de
of
violations de leurs droits humains, tout en
indigenous
renforçant
women
leur
and girls who
autonomisation
are the victims of all
économique
these
et socio-économique des communautés indigènes
mal workings,
ils travaillent
which
ils
affect
travaillent
them
dans le territoire de
socio-economically
Luenga,
and
dans
also
la province
in
d'Ici
terms of
Kivu, en
in
République
Luenga in
démocratique du
South
Congo,
Kivu in
qui
DRC
vit actuellement une crise profonde qui touche les
that
peuples
has a
indigènes
deep
et les
crisis
peuples pygmétois.
that affects
La
the
principale cause de
indigenous
cette crise,
people.
c'est l'octroi injuste des droits aux compagnies minières
There are
sur
three
les
things
terres
that
ancestrales,
actually
en
make
étroite
these people most
collaboration avec
vulnerable.
les autorités provinciales et nationales.
One is the
Ces
provincial
compagnies signent
and
des contrats
national
extractifs
and
minières sans consulter
company.
les
Three things
propriétaires
they
légitimes qui sont
sign contracts that do not take into account the indigenous people and also rural communities, and their absences within all these contracts is actually an intentional way to make these people more vulnerable. So it's just not about the land. That is their native land. And that's their spirituality. Even if you come and give them money and say that you are doing it so that you can take it because you have paid them, what you're doing is you're taking from them something that they had as their spirits. They actually fall sick sometimes because of things that they cannot take. So after what I've said, I'm going to add to my colleague who's going to talk about the organizations that I have just spoken about.
Yeah, thank you so much, Crispin. Thank you so much for providing us that background. Maybe to delve deeper into this, I want to bring into clearer focus the two organizations in question. One, we have We the People from Nigeria. And here we realize that the government, which is supposed to protect against injustice, has tended to be an actor in undermining communities' rights. We the People are stating that government inaction and apathy have propped up illegal mining and worsened the situation of the community, resulting in land grabs, corruption, poor resource management, and violations of community rights. Walking across the continent, moving to the Democratic Republic of Congo, we meet BFLED, where communities are pursuing their rights. They're trying to resist injustice, but this is often met with physical violence, intimidation, and even arbitrary arrests. Now, Wilfred has also noted that government complicity and collaboration with mining companies to sign exploitative contracts without consulting the community is another issue. Therefore, I want to invite us all to this discussion, and we see how we can focus on legal empowerment strategies that can be deployed at the community level so that we have community power that can help all of us where government officials or institutions that are actually needed to address these injustices are unresponsive. We will learn from first-hand experiences about the strategies that these grassroots organizations are using to keep communities hopeful and active in situations where governments are actors in supporting or enabling injustice. So now, just checking across the room, I believe my friend Peter is here. Peter Nsikak, I want to come to you now, but before that, I want to know, Peter, how long have you been at this work? And secondly, what forms of government and responsiveness have you encountered while at this work? Over to you, Peter.
Thank you so much, Evans. Good day, everyone. I hope you're doing okay. So, so to answer your question, at We the People, we've been on this work since September 2023, and how we started was we realized that there were two mining companies who were infiltrating the Cross River State National Park. And the Cross River State National Park is a federal reserved area that prevents or that prohibits extractive activities in such an area. And so we realized that two mining companies that have licenses from the mining cadastral in Abuja, went into the national park and were mining actively. And so when we realized this, we called for a press briefing, brought different media persons together, and read sections of the Nigerian Minerals and Mining Act 2007 and sections of the Nigerian National Service Act, the National Park Service Act 2006, that prohibits mining or any form of extractive activities in such regions. And in a couple of days, we got news that those licenses were revoked. So that is when we started, September 2023. But right now, we are carrying out a project, the Strengthening Women in Mining project, abbreviated as SWIM. And the goal is to empower women in mining host communities to build collective power and address the injustices they are facing through legal empowerment and collective action. And we've been on this since April this year. So that's for the past 7 months. And regarding how we have encountered government pushbacks or stuff like that, there was a time back in April when we started where we heard before April that there was going to be a sale of assets, what we call divestments from Lafarge, which exists here in Cross River State, to a Chinese company, Huaxin Cement Limited. And so what we did was we wrote an FOI request to the Federal Ministry of Mines and Steel Development. We wrote another one to the Federal Ministry of Environment. We wrote another one to the National Environmental Standards and Regulations, National Environmental Standards and Regulations Enforcement Agency, NESRA, requesting for details of this and we didn't get
I'm sorry, I'm losing him. Am I the only one?
Yeah, I'm losing Peter too. Peter, could you please check on your...
We should write these letters and send them all the way to Abuja. These of these are for the needs of the state. And so that
Thank you very much, Peter. Though we kind of lost you a little bit towards the end, but you came back. Allow me to hand over to Crispin to again engage our other discussant. Over to you, Crispin.
Merci beaucoup, Evans, et merci beaucoup, Peter, pour ces éclaircissements en termes de réponses.
Thank you so much, Evans, and for all these clarifications. You had asked a question to Danny.
Effectuez-vous ce travail? Et quelles différentes formes d'absence de réaction
So,
au gouvernement?
for how long have you been doing this work? And how much collaboration?
Je crois que vous me captez très bien. Je m'appelle Dani Mtendelangena depuis la République démocratique du Congo.
You had with the government since you started doing this work? Southern Kivu in this town of Virao. So regarding the work that I'm doing, I'm in charge of the program, and we are working with the indigenous community, pygmy communities,
nous avons plusieurs défis avec le gouvernement parce que les entreprises d'exploitation minière qui travaillent dans notre zone sont les entreprises minières qui signent le contrat au niveau de Kinshasa avec le ministre des Mines, le ministre des... tous les ministres concernés dans les domaines d'exploitation minière. Arrivé sur terrain...
Sorry, Danny. Sorry for cutting you short. I think the English interpretation is not working. Is it working for everyone?
It's
No,
not working. It's breaking.
Yeah, I
It's
think
working,
that
but they're breaking.
kindly the interpreter, the English interpretation is breaking. We aren't able to hear what Danny shared. Sorry guys, please give us just a minute to check on that. Francis or Kennedy, I think the internet was a bit shaky on your end for the English interpretation.
I am here. I think yes, it was my colleague who had taken over.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's do it again. Let me ask him to do it again.
Okay, sorry, Danny, kindly you can start over. The English interpretation was not well. Sorry for that.
Est-ce que l'interpréteur est déjà prêt? D'accord. Je disais, nous
So he
sommes
was saying
Vision Défi
that
Littéraire Développement. Je m'appelle
they
Danny
are
Mtangena. J'exerce les fonctions de chargé de
from, she's
programme.
called Danny
Donc,
Mtandela.
je suis,
He's responsible for
je gère les
programs.
projets en bref.
So
Nous
he
travaillons
manages the
avec la
program.
communauté
So he works with
autochtone Mbuti
the
Mbato
indigenous committee
Bafouer de
from the
Mwenga, mais
Pygmies
aussi dans
from the territory of
la chefferie
Mwenga,
de Bafouer depuis l'an
from
2019.
the
Les
chiefry
difficultés que nous
or
avons, les
the
difficultés que nous
location
avons
of Mwenge,
actuellement,
but the
c'est
challenge that they have
tout
right now,
d'abord
first of all, is
l'inaction gouvernementale. Parce que
the
toutes les entreprises
government
qui
inaction, because
implémentent
all the
des
companies that
entreprises
implement
au niveau de notre communauté, ils signent des
within their
contrats au
community,
niveau de
they sign
Kinshasa, dans la
contracts
capitale,
within
et viennent
the
avec
capital
des
in
documents,
Kinshasa.
avec de l'œuvre,
They come directly
avec des documents
with
déjà
signed
remplis.
contracts,
Ils s'installent
documents that have already
directement.
been
Il
filled,
n'y a pas
and they install themselves. There is no
il n'y a
community
pas
engagement.
la consultation avec la
There's no
communauté, il n'y a pas
community
le
consultation.
consentement libre et éclairé de la
There's
communauté.
no
Il n'y a pas,
consent from the community.
il n'y a pas même
There's not even
l'intégration de la communauté
there's not even
dans tout le processus
integration of the
d'implémentation
community
des
in whatever the
entreprises. Donc,
procession
c'est un
that goes
accaparement
on
des terres
to
irrécent
that.
au
It's
niveau
actually
de
land
notre
grabbing
communauté.
what they
C'est l'un
think
des défis que
in
nous
their
avons.
community.
Quant aux autres défis,
So
par
that's
exemple,
one of
dans
the
le domaine où nous
biggest
travaillons,
challenges they
dans
have.
les
In the
violences
domain that you work
sexuelles,
when
il
it
y a
comes to
souvent
sexual
ces
violence,
exploitants miniers, quand ils arrivent dans le
these
territoire,
these
ils ont
miners,
l'argent
when
et
they
ils ont la parole
arrive,
envers le chef. Parce que chez nous,
have
la
their money,
corruption règne.
and they know
La corruption
because
règne.
in their
Quand
land
vous avez fait quelque
corruption
chose comme
reigns,
un viol,
and when you
il suffit
have
juste de discuter avec le chef,
done something
un
like
verre de
rape,
vin, un pont de vin,
the chief can
et
just
tout est
say,
fini. Il y a aussi
you give me this money, everything is over.
arrangements
And then there's also the
mariage.
challenge
Une femme
where
victime de
we
viol,
have
il vient, on
settlement out
discute
of
entre les
court.
familles,
A
même si le chef passe même par
a
le
small
dossier,
girl
le
will
chef
be
ne réagit
violated
pas,
or
il ne fait rien.
raped,
En bref,
and the
ce
chief
sont les
will
grandes
just
difficultés que nous croisons sur le terrain.
say,
Merci.
there's money, nothing will happen. And that's the thing, that's the challenge.
So thank you, Danny. Thank you, Danny, for those perspectives coming from the DRC. Let us now get back to our friend Peter from Nigeria. And at this point, Peter, I want to know from you, or rather we want to know from you, what methods do you use to build grassroots leadership? And in the same vein, what strategies do you use to deploy power when the government is an actor in the injustice your community is facing, or take on powerful and responsive government institutions and systems? Peter, kindly try to respond to this in 3 minutes.
Thank you so much, Evans. Yes, I'll try my best to respond to it in 3 minutes. So the methods we use to build grassroots leadership. So I just want to set a background that we are working with 5 communities here in Cross River State. They are under the host communities under the big French mining giant Lafarge, and they are Akan Suko, Kodefanga, Mfamusin, Mbubui, and Ekonaku. And so how we build grassroots leadership, number one, we identify the potential leaders. So for example, in our engagements with them, We identify those who are very passionate about the issues, about the injustices. For example, those who have been affected by the mining, maybe if, their waters have been polluted or their lands have been collected from them, degraded because of the mining, and they are seeking for justice. Those are the ones we identify. And then another thing we do is that we build their skills, right? We bring them together, and then we teach them, we give them a direction on how to issue their complaints. For example, you can't just, yeah, there is an injustice, but you need to know the law, you need to know what the law says, and how to use it, to your advantage. So we teach them skills and teach them about the laws. The Joint Minerals and Mining Act, which protects communities, the National Park Service Act, the FY Act, right, and other laws. And if when we want to use the way we use power to engage the government is one key way is using the media. For each and every one of our engagements, we involve the media, and they amplify the voices of the women, they amplify the voices of the communities. In any of our engagements, we've had engagements. We had a town hall meeting. We've had an anti-deforestation conference. We've had a Cross River State forestry law review. Can you still hear me, please?
Yes, you're good. You're good, Peter.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, so we've had a Cross River State forestry law review meeting. We've had that like 3 times. And we've had an engagement, a training engagement on knowing the law. So in all these activities we've carried out, we always involve the media to amplify our voices. So those are the methods we use to build grassroots leadership and also to engage the government.
Thanks a lot, Peter, for keeping to the time. May I, at this opportunity, ask my colleague Crispin to take it over? Over to you, Crispin.
Merci beaucoup, Peter, pour ces éléments de
Thank you
réponse.
so much for giving us these responses that show us how you are working with the community. I had asked myself the same question, and I'm going to ask Dano, which are the methods that you are using to develop leadership on the ground and mobilize your power when the government is not in favor of the efforts that you are making? So what do you do to challenge the government in this context? So you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Crispin.
Thank you so much, Christine. Thank you for giving me the floor. So regarding what we do, the first thing that we believe that amongst us, there are people who are already leaders, people who are leaders, and others are also becoming leaders. So these are the people who need to be supported, because in our community or in our organization, we start by identifying those who have power in the community, like heads of families, like the extended families, Bashiflani and others. After that, we identify those who are leading different groups, like youth groups, women groups, and the credit and saving groups, and the small cooperatives. Once we identify these leaders, we consider them as community leaders, people who have something to say and have influence. When they talk, they are listened to. Once we identify them, we train them. Once they finish the first training, they obtain the title of community ambassadors. So these community ambassadors are the entry points of our organization and also the communities. So they are like the link with the other communities. So they play this role of connecting the community and paralegal experts. So if there is a case, they come in handy when it comes to appearing in the court. The second thing is that these community ambassadors they always go through trainings, because for us, it is always crash trainings that we organize in a continued manner. So sometimes it happens in a classroom and sometimes on the field. So they work with the paralegals in the communities, and once they see what these paralegal experts are doing, they can now do them. And once they finish this training with the paralegals in the community, it is the same training in the classrooms and in all the training sessions that we organize. So they end up learning a lot because they are working with the paralegals who work directly with the advocates, and they are the ones who even develop the advocacy documents that we present to the leaders at the provincial level and even at the national level. So this is the approach that we use. But during this year, 2025, we had to think differently because this is a community organization, and due to this, anybody who has to lead this community must come from the community itself. So what does that mean? So you start as a community leader, then you become a community ambassador, and once you arrive at this level and we see your involvement and commitment in this community, you become a paralegal experts, and there you start working directly with the advocates and the local leaders like the senators, and you are recruited to become a direct agent of the organization. So it is amongst these paralegal experts that you can get coordinators and members of the board. So this is why I'm saying that our community is 100% community-led. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny, from the DRC for that very clear explanation of what you're doing. Listening to our speakers, both from Nigeria and from the DRC, you realize that it is very easy for us to, find ourselves in a state of apathy or a state of hopelessness, particularly when you realize that the people have a contract with the government needs to be a protector of the people, but then the government is, among those that are propagating or supporting the injustice. With this in mind, I now want us to go back to our brother Peter, and we want to know from Peter, how do you sustain hope for justice seekers in the community when the government officials are the main actors in perpetrating injustice, or the institutions that are supposed to respond to people's needs are unresponsive? Over to you, Peter.
Yes, thank you once again, Evans. So it is no news that injustice is not easy to bear, right? And people can easily lose hope, especially when they look at how corrupt the justice or legal system is, and the apathy from the government. But back here with the people, what we try to do is we try to let them know that there are instances where justice was restored or where we found justice. And, we give those stories and let them know that it is possible that when we fight, even if we don't get the exact thing we are fighting for, but the ability for us to identify that injustice and try to address it is good enough. I gave an instance. I gave an instance earlier on the call where I talked about the fact that we realized that the two companies mining in the heart of the national park was wrong and it was against the law. And we quoted sections of that law and used the media to amplify our voices. And we had a revocation of those mining licenses. That is an instance of getting justice for what we want. So we just we can't give up, right? We just have to keep letting them know that although it might sometimes, but justice is assured. And then another way we try to keep the communities going is building a network. Like I said, we work with 5 communities, and we cannot undermine the power of collective action. So we've built a network within these 5 communities where we always interact with them at intervals. We even have a WhatsApp group for those of them who, it's not all of them who have WhatsApp, who can use WhatsApp. For those leaders who have joined, who have WhatsApp, we've created a WhatsApp group, and we are always engaging with them there, because we know that if if we just maybe engage with them once and then pull back, they might always lose hope. But at every instance, we're always talking to them. We're always, if there's any information that can keep them going, we always drop it there on the group chat. And if they have anything they want to share, they can always drop it there, and we're ready to engage with them. Those are the 2 ways we use to sustain hope for them. In this fight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. Let me hand over this to Crispin so that she can rope in Danny as well. Over to you, Crispin.
Merci beaucoup, Evans. Merci.
Thank you so much, Evans. Thank you, Peter, for these good responses and the work that you are doing on the ground, which is good work. So I'd like to ask a third question to know what you do to maintain the hope of your populations that are seeking justice when the government representatives are proving to be an impediment, especially in the territories where you work, where you have difficult access to information. So I would like to know how you do your work so that the community does not lose hope in seeking justice in these landlocked areas. You have the floor. Thank you so much, Crispin, for giving me the floor. I'm really happy to share my experience with you here. First of all, our community leaders, the first thing that we make them understand is that a community can never lose. A community can never lose. When you get into a litigation, even if the response from the local authorities is not favorable, that does not mean that you have failed. So these community leaders can therefore, I don't know how to put it. So these local leaders can say no to an action that you are carrying out, but the local leaders need to know that this is not a negative response for you. So the first thing that we do is to help them understand this. So once they have this in mind, they know that even if the response is not today, another day, the community will still win through continued efforts. So they need to have this in their minds. Once they have this mindset, negative responses will never make them lose hope. They'll always continue with their struggle. But there are days where the communities can feel hopeless when they are almost winning in a case, whatever it is, and then they end up getting a negative response. So what we do is to support these particular communities and show them that the negative responses that we get today can change tomorrow. What is important is to maintain hope and pursue our efforts, never abandoning our cause. So we teach them never to give up. So we can decide maybe to take a break, but that does not mean that we are putting an end to this case. There's always another moment where we can revisit it. So that's what we do, basically. Thank you so much, Danny. Now I would like to give the floor to my colleague so that the question can be asked to Peter.
Thank you so much, Crispin. Peter, perhaps this could be my last question to you for today. And I really want you to help us understand this. How can you draw support from other sources? And by other sources, I mean even from people within government institutions, and where such sources can act as intermediaries between grassroots organizations and government institutions. Over to you, Peter, and you can do this in 4 minutes.
All right, thank you once again, Evans. So I'll give two case scenarios. One way we can draw support is through the partners we work with. For example, we the people, we do not work alone. We work with other CSOs. We work with one called Policy Alert. They had carried out activities in these communities some years before we started. And then we have Onyx Foundation, which is a women-led organization. And so we work with them, we learn with them, and they also they kind of support us in the kind of work we do. Now, I'm talking about getting support even within the government. It's a bit tricky, I would say, but in one of our engagements, for example, the Cross River State Forestry Law Review meetings we've invited a former lawmaker. To the room, and from our engagement, he has always stated that he's ready to liaise with the current lawmakers in the Cross River State House of Assembly to see how they can take a look at laws that protect these communities. So he's very vocal, he's very passionate, and we've identified him and we want to work with him. But regarding existing government individuals in diverse positions, we've not really been able to get anyone, to be honest. But aside this former lawmaker who is ready to work with us, who has seen the importance of what we are doing, I think he's able to give us his support. He's able to give us open arms and give us access to achieve justice.
Thank you very much, Peter, for that response. I know as we continue in these engagements, we'll be able to learn from some of the best practices in other countries where people have been able to get allies within government. Before I hand over to Crispin, I've seen quite a number of hands that are up, and I want to request you that you could either put the question in the chat if it's a question, but if it's not possible for you to do that, just hold your horses a little bit. We'll have time for Q&A. We'll open up the plenary, so just be ready with your questions, your opinion. We'll have time to rope in everyone. With that in mind, allow me now to hand over to Crispin. Over to you, Crispin.
Merci beaucoup, Evans, pour cette...
Thank you so much, Evans, for this information. I had asked the last question to Dami. I want to ask the last question before we get into discussion. So I would like to know, how do you manage to get support from other sources? And when I talk of other sources, I'm talking about the government or intermediaries from the government and grassroots organizations and government institutions, so that the cause of the community can be advanced. So how do you manage to get support from these different entities? Because you know that the areas in which you're working, the level of education is very, very low, and people don't even have access to internet. So how do you manage to work in such a context, trying to collaborate with the government as well? Because where you work, it's the eastern part that is very far, and in the capital where we have institutions that are making major decisions, it's far. So there's a big geographic distance. So I'm wondering, in such a difficult context, how do you navigate all these challenges?
Daniel, est-ce que vous êtes là?
Daniel, did you get my question? Thank you for the question. I'm going to respond to it. You know that in our country, in Congo, we have 3 levels of power: parliamentary, executive, and also judiciary. And we also have the press. So if the executive power, who our leaders at different levels do not support us, that does not mean that we cannot have support. We have other sources of support, like all the national parliamentarians in Mwenga have representatives in the villages and in our different groups, and even at the local authority level. So what does that mean? If our village leaders do not support us, we can still resort to other sources of support. He's breaking. And we end up getting this support. And amongst the government workers, they are not all easily corrupted. There are those who support us as well. We also work with our paralegal experts at the ground level for data collection. And after collecting data, we send that to the representatives at other levels, and there's a policy paper that is prepared that is sent to the Senate and the Parliament. So that is the approach that we take. So it is these parliamentarians and also the advocates that we collaborate with. Thank you. Thank you, Daniel, for giving us a response on how you ensure collaboration with the different levels of power. Now, I would like to give the floor to my colleagues so that we can proceed to the point where we need to have questions and comments so that we can continue improving our knowledge and the work that we do on the ground. You have the floor, Evans.
Thank you so much, Crispin. We want to invite all of us now to this particular session. It's going to be a session of about 15 minutes where we invite your questions, your comments, or even recommendations. As you do so, kindly be very brief so that we are able to give more room to everyone. And we'll use a simple method. You raise your hand and you'll be prompted to be able to speak. Welcome.
You see, Lugendo Musoba, I can see your hand is raised. Kindly unmute your microphone and proceed to ask your question, please.
Bonjour à tout le monde. Je suis Lugendo.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lugendo from Alternative Movement. I have put many questions on the chat, but I'm going to ask 2 questions. The first question I want to ask Dan, because we're in the same team in DRC, and he has said somewhere that there's no use of prior consentment. So how have they incorporated or the use of the law for protection of indigenous people that has been put in the National Gazette? Because this is a tool that they can use to push the tool, so the state to act. Second question, I also want to know if there are other initiatives or other actors, maybe state actors or non-state actors who work to actually take care of this injustice, either land or economic related? Do we have any other initiatives from other actors from the mining sector? Because we know that the autochthon people or indigenous people are having these problems. Thank you. Thank you, Lugendo. And I'm very happy to respond to your question. One of the difficulties that we have within our region is that the local authorities, you're going to notice that even them that we are talking about right now, they have little knowledge on the indigenous community rights. So when we put in the rights, or we talk about the law that protects the indigenous people, when we talk about indigenous people in other terms, we talk about the people who are thought of, because even the law does not even thinking of them. They think of them of those guys who think about the rural mining communities. With these difficulties that we have today, you're going to notice that the local authorities that we're talking about now don't have these local or indigenous rights of the people. So first of all, we need to tell them what is the law. What does the law say about the protection of the indigenous communities? So they have to again explain to the local authorities. I'm going to talk about the example of Tombwe. Our chief himself has no level of studies or education that we can talk about. So you have to have the state to tell him what the law says. And once he knows, he can be convinced. Why? Because you need to, first of all, go through the chief advocate. After that, he's going to go to the national level and do advocacy. And after that, he goes to the MPs and senators, and it's them who discuss directly with the minister. The decision does not come from the minister. Once that the MPs and the senators talk to the minister tries to talk to the new companies. And when he comes to them, they first of all tell them to talk to the communities before they work, before they do anything, before they put in their companies. That's what they do. Thank you. There's another question that you had asked, if there are other initiatives. I don't know if there are any other organizations. Yes, we have other organizations that are in partnership with us. We have other companies that work with us in the fight. In Senegal, I think we talked about it, to work with other organizations in a consortium, because in a fight or an injustice, you cannot fight it alone, one organization alone. You always have to have a partnership and have alliances and allies and people who actually do whatever you can't do. And that's what we're doing right now. After this meeting, I think we can even talk and see if we can work together to actually create a partnership between us. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Danny, for those responses. Any other hand that is up?
Sylvain Alangomolia. Sylvain, you can unmute your mic.
Oui, merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Oui, merci beaucoup, c'est Sylvain.
This is my Silva. I want to just support what Danny has just said because I'm from DRC. I'm from the Blind People's Organization. I just want to just support what my colleague has said. When we talk about the people who are from the indigenous, I'm from Avid, sorry. There are also lines that we use to support indigenous people's rights. And we also fight against injustices that are done against the indigenous people. So, as my colleague has just said, Danny, yes, in a fight, we cannot fight alone. We need to have alliances. We need to have allies and the strongest so that we can fight and we can defend a marginalized community. So, of course, in DRC, we have many voices, many combats, many people who are trying to fight for the rights of the indigenous people. We also have an indigenous people, and we also have people who, within those communities that fight in all levels, and they fight against actually things that are done to the indigenous people. So I want to just support my colleague. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvain. Who else is there?
We have Buyengu.
Bonjour tout le monde.
Hello everyone. DKC Buyengo from Congo Brazzaville in Coctois. We have done a lot of studies on the ground. Up to date, we have noted that the problems are on two levels. First of all, we have at the summit, there's a government that are working for their personal interests. So to even go against what is the law, so they can give a company a place to mine and a place that has been actually delimited for protection without, and then there are companies that are born within the country, and this person comes as a tourist but tomorrow becomes an investor, so we give him a permit to cut forests, and we cannot say anything because he is actually an investor. So we have 4 places in Congo Brazzaville I can talk about. So when it comes to that, what can we talk about? What do we do? Because it's already there. From someone, I'm sorry, he has an echo from his side. I'm sorry.
C'est celui qui est là à côté. Arrête ton micro. Ok? C'est bon? On peut parler?
Okay. Thank you, Buyengu.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, he had not finished. He had not finished. There was an echo.
S'il faut que je continue. Mais sinon, pour finir, j'aimerais penser que je penserais plutôt que s'il y a la possibilité.
He wanted to say if there's a possibility that how it can be clarified, how those two positions can be linked around what law talks about, because there are people who are receiving from the government and those ones who are working think actually having to fight the complex, and the ones who are at the summit know what is going on, and the guys who are fighting down here don't know what is going on. So what can happen to reconcile these two positions around the rights so that the rights of everyone are respected? Thank you very much.
Danny, I can see your hand.
Danny, allez-y.
Est-ce que je peux répondre à la question? OK. De mon côté, je vois si
So from his
l'injustice
side,
vient d'en haut,
if the
au niveau national,
injustice
pour
comes
venir
from the
attaquer
national
la
level
communauté locale,
to
il faut
actually
également orienter
attack
le
the
plaidoyer
local
au
committee,
niveau
you
national.
have to
Donc,
actually
travailler
attract
étroitement avec les
advocacy
députés
at the national
nationaux, par
level.
exemple les députés,
Work
les
with
sénateurs. Je sais pas
the
si c'est le même
national
principe
elected
au-
level, the
en
MPs,
RDC, c'est
senators. I don't know if
autant
it's
en
the same
Brazzaville.
thing
Parce que
in DRC. I don't know if
beaucoup de
it's the same
députés
thing in
nationaux ont
Brazzaville,
des
Congo,
représentants
because
au niveau local.
every
Et si
MP has
vous avez
a
choisi un
local
député, vous avez
representative,
bien
and
dit un
if you
député,
have elected an
et
MP
le député n'a pas,
and
le
an
député n'a
MP,
pas fait le
an
travail
MP
selon le
has
mandat
not
que vous lui
done
avez
the
accordé.
job
Ils ont
what
toujours à l'expliquer. Je vais encore revenir
he
sur le terrain.
was
Je vais
asked to
solliciter la
do.
voix de la
He
communauté
should
locale.
be
Et ce
called
qu'on
back
fait, ce n'est
and
pas
ask
sur pas de
the
politique.
community to
Ici, ce n'est pas du politique.
ask
Ce qu'on fait,
for
on dit,
his
monsieur, vous
reinstatement.
avez porté notre
It's not
mandat. Parce que
really political.
on appelle ça les
It's
pouvoirs
because
parlementaires.
we
Ils
gave you a
partent au
job.
gouvernement, ils partent
You
au
have
niveau,
a
ils
mandated.
partent
You come from the
ils
local
travaillent avec
mandate
l'État comme les pouvoirs parlementaires.
and
Ils portent
you
la
work
voix de la
with the state
population au
as
sein du
a
gouvernement. Ils
representative
exigent le gouvernement
within
qu'est-ce que le
the
gouvernement
government.
doit faire
You
pour la
force the
communauté.
government
Par
to
exemple,
do
un
whatever
ministre
the government
a
needs to do
donné
for the
l'arrêté
community.
pour aller
A
exploiter
minister, for
sur le
example,
territoire déterminé.
made an order
C'est
to
aux
stop
députés, c'est aux
that
sénateurs d'aller voir
mining
directement le
exploitation.
ministre et lui
So
dire
it's that
quel
MP's
intérêt que
work
vous
to
avez
go and
accordé à
follow
une
up and
entreprise qui
see
appartient à telle
what is the
communauté.
interest that you put
Et
to
si
this so that we can
vous ne
follow
faites
it up.
pas gaffe, donc c'est la
And if that
communauté
MP is not doing
vous
it,
attaquer, de menacer. Il faut bien réagir
then
pour que cette
maybe
communauté
it
ne
should
soit
be
pas
reacted so
pénalisée.
that this
Parce que
committee should
la
not be
logique que nous
penalized.
travaillons,
Because the
nous
logic
chez nous
that
avec
we are
la
working
communauté
with
autochtone, c'est
with
pas la même
the
logique au Congo-Brazza. Parce qu'une entreprise peut venir
indigenous
comme ça.
community, we are
Et
saying
après, si
this.
le gouvernement n'a pas fait son rôle,
If the government has
c'est
not
l'entreprise qui
done
va
its
subir
job,
les menaces. Parce que
is
l'entreprise
going the
risque même de tout perdre.
company that is going to
L'entreprise
be
risque même
threatened. It might
de subir les
lose
menaces.
everything.
Maintenant, il faut arranger ça avant,
So
avant
now
que les
they need
conséquences
to
ne soient
work with the
énormes.
state
Parce que les
before
conséquences
the
que
consequences
l'entreprise peut
becomes
subir aussi
enormous,
peut,
because the company
peut être énorme.
might
L'entreprise
suffer
peut même
a
finir
lot
en
of
faillite
consequences. They can actually
si
go
l'entreprise n'a pas
bankrupt
suivi la
if the
procédure.
company did not
Et tout
follow
ça,
the procedures.
ce sont les leaders
And all
locaux qui
this,
doivent jouer
it's
ce
our
rôle.
local
Il faut
leaders
voir toujours,
who
il faut
need to
toujours
work.
travailler avec les
So first of all, you need to work
nationales.
with your local
Si
leaders, the
l'injustice vient
national
d'en haut,
elected
mais si
leaders.
l'injustice est causée par les chefs
If
locaux,
the injustice has been
chefs
caused
locaux,
by the
il faut toujours
local
travailler directement avec
leaders,
ces chefs locaux.
you have to
C'est
work
ce que je
with
voulais,
those
ce que je
ones.
pense.
Follow them. That's what I think.
Oh, thank you, Danny, and thank you, Evans, for moderating that session. Well, your questions are really important, and they've contributed to the discussions today. The emerging issues that you raise are also important for the topic that we're discussing today, and thank you for all those questions. And thank you to our moderators, our discussant, Danny and Peter, for answering those questions. So for this next session, we just want to do a recap of what both Danny and Peter have shared with us. So what we learned is that in Nigeria and in the Democratic Republic of Congo, there are similar instances of community impoverishment that is mostly happening with the blessings of the government. So there is illegal mining in Nigeria that government issues permits that enable mining in protected areas such as national parks. And even in DRC, we've seen that the governments at the national levels, mostly in Kinshasa, issue permits for companies that without community involvement. And these permits are basically selling away or giving away these community lands. And these are the problems that both the communities in DRC and in Nigeria are facing. And we, the people and VFLED in Congo, are basically using similar strategies. We've seen similarities in terms of the approaches they're using. And to build community power, we've learned from Nigeria with our colleague Peter shared that we, the people, work with communities. So they work with a network of 5 communities, and they try to identify leaders within those communities, potential leaders, people who are passionate, people already passionate about these issues that they're working around, where they build their capacities, but they also empower them on the law. So still going back to the legal empowerment circle, know law, use law, and shape law. So without knowledge of the law, without this kind of collective organizing, bringing people together and educating them on the law, then it becomes difficult to build community power. So the foundational thing to do when you're trying to build community power is, first of all, organize the people, bring them together, identify common issues that the communities are facing, and then now you can identify the specific laws that are relevant to those issues that communities are facing, and you educate these communities and empower them, because they're already people who have demonstrated leadership. So even in instances where there's injustice, there's still community members who are standing up with or without the support of organizations such as We the People and VFLED, but they come in to support these communities by basically taking them through the law and empowering them to understand the law. And once they've done that, they give them skills and directions on the law that they can use to lodge complaints or to challenge some of these issues that are going on. And we've learned from We the People that they work with women through the project called SWIM, which is strengthening women in mining. So they work with women who work in mining, and they're challenging some of the issues with illegal mining in national parks and such. And once they've been able to organize these communities, then they can use this power to challenge or engage with government. And one key strategies that Peter shared that We the People use is they seek allies within government, though sometimes that is difficult. For VFLED, we've learned from Danny that they also use a similar approach by the same legal empowerment approach, identify leaders within the community. And Danny shared that amongst the communities, there are people who are already leaders. There are different organizations, there are youth groups. These youth groups have leaders. There are women groups, for example, credit and savings groups. Danny shared in the DRC, those groups exist, and these groups are already organized. So can you leverage on groups that are already organized and use those groups through trainings, through empowering them on relevant laws on the issues that your communities are facing? Then you can be able to build that level of grassroots community leadership through using those approaches. And for the second question, we learned that even as we build this power, sometimes when we go to the government, we see some level of unresponsiveness and some levels of unresponsiveness that both we've observed in both the DRC and in Nigeria is sometimes there's complicity within government actors by issuing irregular contracts and also permits, for example, in mining in areas that are protected, for example, national parks. There's also the aspect of dodging responsibility, where you take a complaint to a particular office, but they redirect you to another office saying that that is not their responsibilities and that they shouldn't be the people to act on those issues. So we've learned from both Danny and Peter that when the governments are unresponsive, one way that you can use to build agency within the community is to empower them so that they can make demands on their own. Because sometimes when we go to the government as organizations, and this has been even observed in Kenya, sometimes on the issues that you work around, when you go as an organization, they dismiss you, saying that who are you to come to us? But when community members themselves present grievances, and the communities are leading in challenging some of this government and responsiveness, then we can see action, and we can see that even when there's no action, at least the community has that agency to question some of these things. And I liked a quote from Peter in terms of the third question that you asked on how do we sustain hope. And Peter said that when we fight, we win. Even when we don't get what we want, it is worth celebrating the fact that we are trying. So, and that aligns with a quote from a famous freedom fighter in Kenya. It was called Dedan Kimathi, and there's a very strong quote that has been passed down from his life, where he says that he'd rather die on his feet than live on his knees. So that's a quote from Dedan Kimathi, who is a freedom fighter in Kenya, and that resonated well with me in terms of just reminding communities that as much as the institutions that we're trying to use to help us acquire justice are unresponsive, the fact that you're fighting means that you already won. And Peter also shared that. He also shared that the power of the people is stronger than the people in power. So we remind the communities that we shouldn't lose hope. We still have power, and we can harness that power within communities to keep on engaging on the issues that you're trying to change. So that really resonated with me. He also shared that the need to build alliances, and that was echoed by, I think, one of the questions. I think it was Buyengu who shared that we need to build alliances and build allies who can also support us, because working in isolation, as we learned even in how do we sustain community engagement, we cannot work in isolation. We need to think about who are the other organizations, or who are the other allies. For example, allies that we the people work with can be like ex-members of parliament, ex-former legislators, because sometimes people in power can be consumed by that power, but people outside power, for example, members of parliament who perhaps didn't get re-elected, sometimes they can be allies that can help you get to these people in power. So think about such leaders who can also act as talking heads, who can act as champions to your cause. And similarly, we should also think about institutions that have influence over government. For example, both Danny and Peter have shared that they work with the media, and media have power to shape narratives and influence the government, expose issues. For example, the issue in Nigeria, when we the people realized that there was illegal or there was mining happening within the national park, they issued a press briefing, and they partnered with the media as a force that can then influence even unresponsive institutions sometimes to make change. So they also, in Kenya, we've also worked with some independent government agencies, and I don't know if that's the context in Nigeria and the DRC. Sometimes there are government agencies that can also hold the government accountable. And such agencies can also help you direct and lodge complaints, and that then can be can act as an additional push to just trying to shape some of the issues that we are working on. So I think those are some of the summary issues that I've been able to pick. And then how can we get support from other sources outside ourselves? So Peter shared that we need to think about other organizations that are working around these issues and work with others to bring their unique strengths in our work. And also, as I've shared, invite former leaders. But I also like something that Danny shared, that not all, sometimes, even though it might be difficult to get allies within government, not all government officials are corrupt. Sometimes you can find people who are willing to support your work within government institutions. And so it doesn't mean that we don't look to people within government to help us move things. But also Danny shared that they do a lot of documentation through their paralegals. They document cases, they document data, and they use this evidence, build compelling evidence that then the government can't deny. And they table this evidence before the Senate through policy papers and with members of parliament who can then assist them to move certain actions. So leveraging those relationships, and also just building on data and evidence to create compelling evidence that then can't be dismissed even at the levels of unresponsiveness that we're seeing in some of these government organizations. So those are some of the key highlights that I'd picked up from the discussion. I'd like to now welcome Nuria to take us through the next part of our discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you, Moses. Thank you so much for that summary. I think I'd like it to hand over to Sylvester just before I take over.
Yes, thank you, Nivea. Hi, everyone, and thank you, Moses, for the summary. I quickly want to highlight that beyond the learning circles, going through the conversations, the discussions, and then the chat, it tells that all of us are really doing well within our respective countries, using legal empowerment to achieve or resolve injustices that communities are facing. So therefore, I want to kindly highlight that beyond the learning circles, we have the GJN Africa WhatsApp group. We can take the discussions there. If you have used any legal empowerment approach where you have been successful, you can share your impact stories with us, with the team, and we can reach out to you to see how we can synthesize that information for the greater good of the network. If you are using a particular approach under legal empowerment, and then you seem to have come to a standstill or have faced a stumbling block, or you want to learn from others how they maneuvered or how they were able to overcome such challenges, I think that the WhatsApp platform is also a very good place for us to harness these discussions and build on our learnings from there. So I wanted to highlight that because I see a lot of rich discussions in the comment that if not for these learning circles, we wouldn't have gotten to know about it. I was speaking to someone last week in the Gambia, and the person says that he wants to know what is happening in the Chad because he see that Chad is a member of the GJN African Network and of course DRC. But I see that the work we are doing, we barely share some of the information. So please let's bear this in mind and see how we can also keep the WhatsApp platform very engaging. I know Nuri is in charge of that, but I wanted to highlight that so that going forward we can continue discussions from there. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you, Nuri. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Sylvester, and thank you for highlighting on building engagement in the WhatsApp. And I think even building on to that discussion, we have been taking notes of the questions and the feedback that you've shared. I think, as Sylvester has mentioned, this is really good feedback for us to also look at themes and other topics and discussion points we hadn't had in mind. And as he's noted, we'll definitely share this feedback and information on WhatsApp, address some of these questions on WhatsApp, but feel free to continue the discussion there. It's good to learn how every single context is different, but then we all look back at how to look at power, how to form allies and stuff like that. And so I think also, just to wrap it up, just to thank everyone for making the time to join this session. It has been a long time coming. We've been planning for a while. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Evans. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Crispin, for the great moderation and for the good feedback and points you've shared. I think, as mentioned again, we will come up with a one-pager summary and we'll share this on WhatsApp. We also have our newsletter, the GJN Africa newsletter, coming up at the end of the year. So we'll also share recordings of this session, our first learning circle, and also a summary of these discussions. I think just to wrap it up again and to finalize with a quote from Danny, he said that a community can never lose. And so with that, I think it's a good point to end this discussion on. And also just to again highlight what Peter also said, that truly we need to celebrate the small wins, and people power is greater than the people who hold power. So thank you so much. I think with this, I would like to end the session here. And again, just thank you everyone for joining. Sorry, Moses, yeah?
Sorry for interrupting you. Is it possible to share in the chat section the link to join the WhatsApp platform for those who maybe are not already within those platforms?
Yeah, that's okay.
And if you are also able to turn on your camera for a quick picture, take a picture.
Okay.
So if you can turn on your cameras, I have 2 slides. I see the first one, but I don't have too many people on the first one, so if you can turn on your camera.
Okay, so I am sharing the link to join our WhatsApp group in the chat. Please, this WhatsApp group, we have the community. We have a community where we have both Anglophone and Francophone members, and then we have the Anglophone community and the Francophone community. So please feel free to join whichever language group that is comfortable for you. So then maybe we can turn on the cameras, and Sylvester, maybe you can take the group picture.
Yes, I've taken one. Let me take another one.
Sylvester, should we pause or anything?
All right.
Should we smile?
Yes, please smile. Please smile. Let me see. Let me go back to the first slide and take it again. Okay. And 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Thank you, Mercy. Asante.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Evans, Sika, Peter. Hey, Sylvain. How are you, Sylvain? Oh, God. All right. Oh, it's been long.
Fine.
Merci.
Yes, merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Est-ce que ça vient au Nigeria?
Yeah, hi, Andrew. I also Andrew. Where are you?
Loud and clear here. Hi, teacher.
Hello,
Hello, everyone. Hello,
Margaret. Oh,
I can see
Mikey.
Margaret.
I'm
I can
just
see
seeing Mikey
Famata.
alone. I've seen a lot of people.
I can see Famata. I can see Margaret. I can see Andrew.
Oh, yeah, Peter. Good to see you again.
All right. Good to see you guys. Bye. Victoire. Bye. All right.